Oh, that's good. That's good. You are the one that's causing harm to our community. And why do we have to help you?
According to the World Gaming Index,
Oh, there we go. I am just here to try to understand my country more in a deeper point of view. Minasan konnichiwa and welcome to Let's Ask Shogo. So a few months back I made a video talking about why Japanese people are the most unwilling to help others. Basically why Japanese people are so cold-hearted. What was really funny at that timing is that really I think it was just a week difference, maybe less than a week difference. Nobita from Japan made a video that had a really similar title, Why Are Japanese People So Cold-Hearted? And a lot of people were like, wow, did Nobita and Shogo kind of plan to make a similar video together at the same timing? But the answer is no. I had no idea that we'd be making such a similar themed video at the same timing actually. And a lot of people have been giving me DMs and comments to react to his video actually. I do a lot of studying about Japanese people's characters and personalities and the way we live and such, so I love to share my opinions with you while I take a look at his video. And by the way, before I actually start taking a look at Nobita's video, if you're interested, Nobita and I have actually done a collaboration video in the past too, so I hope you can check that out. I asked him a lot of questions, what he have experienced or learned through his activities as a YouTube journalist, so I hope you can check out both part 1 and part 2. In this channel, you can take a closer look at Japanese traditional culture, tips on traveling to Kyoto, and social problems in Japan. So learners and lovers of Japanese language and culture, be sure to subscribe to enjoy more content. Then, without further ado, let's start taking a look at Nobita's video.
when you think about Japanese people, you might have a positive impression. This article says these are the top 10 words describing us.
Polite, punctual, kind, hardworking, so many positive words. Oh, shy, okay. Grouping, formal.
I don't think these are far away from the reality, and there are definitely sometimes I can see those in Japan. Related to that, this social experiment went viral on YouTube a while ago.
Oh, the wallet dropping. Yeah. Okay.
Not just those comments, but I see so many other people saying the same. And that might be one of the reasons why Japanese passports are the strongest in the world. Maybe based on the assumption like Japanese people must be honest, respectful, kind, and trusted. But growing up in Japan, I have a different perspective on that.
So I have actually received some questions in the past about the wallet picking up experiment myself, and I actually made a podcast video in my sub-channel in the past. So I talked about Japanese people are really unwilling to help others and that they're really cold-hearted in my channel as well. And there were some people asking me, but Shogo, why are everyone returning all the things that people lost or picking up these wallets for them? So I personally would say though, this experiment, I personally feel that this doesn't represent that Japanese people are good people or they are honest and such. This experiment, what it represents is not that, but what it represents is that Japanese people really cares about what other people around them would think about them. So if you take a look at the video of the people picking up the wallets again, you can see that there's a lot of people around them, right? They're usually at stations where there's a lot of people, other people around them watching. They really care about what other people would think about them, right? That is exactly the reason why they would immediately return the wallets to them. They don't want their friends to think that, you're a really vulgar person, stealing someone else's money, or you're afraid that the moment you pick it up, even if you're on your own, there might be someone watching you. And then it's just better, so much easier, just give it back to the person who dropped it so you won't be attacked or slandered by anyone. So I think this just basically is an experiment that proves that Japanese people prioritize what others would think about them the most.
Let me share my personal story. When I was a little kid, I went for shopping with my grandma. She offered me to buy a school bag for celebration my admission to elementary school. On the way to the store at our station, she suddenly collapsed on the floor and started to agonizing while clutching her chest. I was extremely freaked out and panicked, and desperately hoping that somebody will notice and help us out immediately. But no one, not a single person even stopped and talked to us. People just took a glance for a moment and passed by us just like nothing was happening. It took us more than 10 minutes until the station staff came to us. Because I was crying so loud, like almost yelling, so maybe they couldn't ignore that. That was actually my first time getting on ambulance, and my grandma was okay in the end. But I was shocked by the fact no one helped us, and got me thinking, maybe Japanese people are cold-hearted.
I have rarely seen strangers in Japan help
Oh, is this
each other.
Gaijin Goomba?
I've seen police help
Oh
people.
yeah, that's him.
One thing that I remember that happened.
One of my best
first time I
friends.
took my wife to Japan, she actually got sick. No one stopped to help, except for the station manager. And I like to think that that's kind of his job. This is not to say everyone is like this.
yes.
I've met wonderful people, but I really do think a lot of people in Japan are harmonious because they don't want to be the nail that needs hammered down. They don't want to be the one that sticks out, so they just do what everyone else does. They don't get involved with anyone else. They don't risk themselves for other people.
By the way, I reacted to Gaijin Goomba's video in the past too, but I really love his content. And I really like his opinions too. The way he understands Japanese people is very accurate from my point of view. I really think that his opinions and content are amazing, so I hope you can check out his channel too. So about Nobita's story and his grandmother collapsing, unfortunately, I have to say that I'm not that surprised. I'm pretty sure it's something that would unfortunately very often happen in Japan. Like for example, my wife, when she was pregnant with our second daughter, she had a stroller with her. She was holding the hand of my first daughter, and she got on a train, and she had a big belly. She had a very small child with her, and she was standing in front of the priority seats, and no one lended the seats to her. My wife Harumi told me about this later on, about this story, but there were young people sitting in the priority seats, not lending her the seats at all. And this is something that happens very often. I mean, the level of the trouble is definitely not the same. It must have been much harder for them. Of course, my wife, not being able to sit down on a train is completely different, but still that wholeness, as he expresses in this experience, is something that I have definitely felt before in Japan. Just as Gaijin Goomba was explaining, basically the motivation for Japanese people to take actions is not to earn positive points, but it's rather to avoid earning any negative points. So everyone is afraid that by trying to help someone, they might actually cause trouble and stand out and embarrass themselves. That's what people are more concerned about than actually helping someone.
In Japan, it's quite rare to see homeless people compared to the West. But sometimes, you're gonna see them in a big city like Shinjuku or Ikebukuro, and you rarely see anybody trying to help them, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. But that's something I saw different in the US, where I saw many people and organizations helping homeless people or engaged in charity or volunteer work. So it makes sense there's a huge gap compared to the US when it comes to donation. According to a Pew Research Center, the Japanese would be the least likely to support a safety net, as only 59% agree that the government should support people in poverty. And according to the World Giving Index, when it comes to the helping a stranger category, Japan ranked to the bottom. In the donating money to charity and volunteering time categories, Japan is also quite behind from other countries. Of course, it doesn't mean all Japanese people are so cruel or brutal to strangers, but if you are expecting they must be so kind and helping you a lot, you might be disappointed in Japan.
Basically, the worst thing that you can do in Japan is, again, to stand out or to become a nuisance to the group, troubling someone else. The biggest thing that you must avoid are these things. Causing trouble against others within the society, within the community. Japanese people in general believe that the people who are causing trouble or brought nuisance to the group aren't people that deserve to be helped. And that is the idea where not helping homeless people, not helping, for example, single mothers, not helping the children living in poverty, all of these things come from this idea. It's your responsibility. You are the one that's causing harm to our community. And why do we have to help you? You're the one that's a nuisance kind of idea. And that's the reason why hardly anyone helps them, unfortunately. If we take the COVID pandemic as an example, when someone caught COVID in Japan, they weren't helped They weren't helped, no. We didn't help each other. What we did is attack each other. People who got COVID, regardless of who it was, they would have been attacked. For example, if they were people who were famous, like celebrities and such, back at that time when the COVID pandemic was at its peak, they would literally be attacked on social media, on any kind of media actually, for getting the sickness. And again, causing trouble to the group, destroying the harmony. That's the worst thing you can do in Japan. And once you do that, you're out of the group. You're not a member anymore. So we don't care about you. This is the message that you can understand from the story that Nobita has introduced.
日本人は冷たいというよりかは、できる限り他人と関わらないようにしている。学校でも家でもよそ様に迷惑をかけるなっていうふうに教えられて育つ子が多いと思うんですよね。できる限り見知らぬ他人と関わろうとしない、見知らぬ他人を助けようとしない、そして冷たいっていうふうな形として見られてしまっているんじゃないかな。同じ日本人に対してはそういった傾向があるんですけど、例えば旅行で日本に訪れている外国人の方には助けようとするっていう人もいるので、ギャップを感じるような話なのかなとは思っています。お客さん扱いしているから、特別な視線で見ているから外国人を助けようとする。日本人は自ら助けてっていう風になかなか言うことが難しい。で、それって他人に迷惑をかけるなっていう風に、教え込まれて育ってきたからっていうのがあると思うんですけど、外国人の旅行者の方の場合は結構その向こうから聞いてくるっていうこともあって、そうすると聞かれたら困ってるよっていう風にアピールしてくれたら助けられる日本人が多いんじゃないか。
One of the main things that we are taught in Japan as we grow up is to not trouble anyone around you. The first thing that you're taught as a child, and it's like something that you're taught throughout your whole education, basically. And again, this comes from the idea of collectivism, the collectivism society in Japan. I've explained many times that the Edo period, the last era that the samurais existed, have had a really big impact on modern Japan and the characteristics of Japanese people even today. But back at that time, the smallest unit in society were actually groups. It could have been the family, it could have been the business, and there weren't any individuals in society. So if one person within the family or within the business creates trouble, it's everyone's responsibility. Everyone will be punished. So you don't want to cause that kind of trouble to the group that you belong to, because you always, of course, need to cooperate and help out each other. This is where the idea comes from. Even though society has changed and it's been more than 150 years since the Edo period ended, we still have this mindset in Japan. And that's why children are always taught to not trouble anyone. Don't be that nail that sticks out kind of thing. But as I've explained in my own video as well, Aziz said, people from overseas, many Japanese people understand that we have different cultures. And again, I don't want anyone to misunderstand that there are, of course, honest people and kind people in Japan too. So there are people who do want to help, but they don't know how to, or they're afraid of doing it. And they end up not being able to do anything because they're afraid that they might hurt the other person. And it's sometimes not just about themselves, but the other person too. You might think that, well, maybe this person doesn't need any help, or you tend to overthink. As he explained though, if the other person asks for help, it's much easier to help them out because there are people who do want to help and such. And you understand that there's different cultures, so it's much easier to do so. And that's the reason why in my video too, there was a lot of people in the comments saying that, well, I've seen some people being completely left out and not being helped and everything, but also at the same time, there were a lot of kind Japanese people helping me out. It feels really strange, just as he said, but that is the thing. So one thing that you can absolutely say is that when you are treated, again, as a guest or a customer, and once you're considered a person, a member of the group, you are treated completely differently. So that's, I think, another unique point about Japanese people.
Now let me share my thoughts on this based on my experience here. This is not just in Japan, but maybe stronger in Japan than other countries. When I was working for a Japanese company, overtime work was completely a norm, like almost every day. I didn't like it, but I felt a strong pressure not to be the first one to leave the office. And this is what one of the employees told me at the time. And I think that's the common mentality and way of thinking in Japan. You deserve to suffer, because I'm also suffering a lot. Rather than trying to reduce overtime work or boycotting together, they wanna drag you down to the same position so that everyone is gonna suffer together. To put it simply,
crazy.
Rather than let's be happy together, it's more like let's unhappy together. Or group mentality surely works positively sometimes. But I have to say many Japanese would be suffering by that.
Now this let's be unhappy together is something that I explained in a different video where I talked about Bushido will ruin Japan. Now again, Japanese society, this collectivist society, I really always like using the metaphor that compared to individualism, it's more like individualism is a one-person race. One individual can run on their own, and at their own pace and everything. But collectivism, or I should say the Japanese society, is more like a 30 people, 31 leg race. So everyone has their legs tied together, everyone needs to run at the same pace, everyone being the same is the top priority, right? So when everyone needs to be the same, it's much more difficult for everyone to be in a better environment or advance their skills. It's much more difficult for everyone to go to a higher position, right? So it's much easier to adjust being the same in a lower position together. For example, you can leave your workplace sooner if you can get your job done, right? But not everyone can work that fast. There might be more people who take more time. And then it's so much easier for everyone to work more than to work less and get work done. And then it's so much easier to just everyone work more and be the same there at that line there. That's the reason why we end up saying, let's be unhappy together.
And this tendency has been more and more common. According to an internet survey, nearly 90% feeling anxious about the future. And another survey shows that even among teenagers, only few of them have hope in the future. But it actually makes sense. Many Japanese couldn't see a bright future even before the pandemic. Having such a prolonged recession or average wage has never been rising, at least for these 20 years. And despite of the high employment rate, Japan's poverty rate has been rising a lot. You see, it's harder to be optimistic, and maybe we simply can't afford to care about other people in need, like homeless people. This is what my many friends in Japan told me, and I totally understand that.
Again, this Japan getting poorer and poorer is something I have explained so many times in my video as well. A lot of people find it difficult to believe it, but it's true. I talked about it in a video where I talked about Japan is cheap and such too. But as I always say, 1 out of 7 children in Japan are living in poverty. Nobita, I've talked about it as well, but there's also a school debt problem. So a lot of university students borrow a lot of money to go into university, and once they graduate and start working, repaying for the debt is the first money they have to do, and also make a living with a very, very low wage that hasn't been rising in the past 20, almost even 30 years now. Japan is believed to be almost the only country where the average wage has been stagnant for such a long time. So the economy has not been growing, it's almost been getting weaker and weaker for almost like 3 decades. And what's even more terrifying is that Japan becoming poorer and poorer, it's not going to stop. It's going to get worse from here due to the population decreasing and also yen, the currency itself, becoming cheaper. Japan's poverty, unfortunately, so far has no hope of getting any better than this.
Having said that, if we really think about it, we know there are many people in a much tougher situation. Now, I've been talking about a lot of negative stuff about Japan on my channel, and I still think this country has many social programs. But if I compare to other countries, I think Japan is still much better and fortunate state. I like the cleanness on the street, universal healthcare insurance, public transportation, and extremely low crime rate, to name a few. Despite of all the social issues we have, I personally think that Japan is overall really comfortable and safe to live. But still, it can be difficult to feel grateful with this, because I don't think many Japanese know what's going on in other countries. The Japanese media or TVs, they rather focus on something like this, as it gets much more audience, while all the media in the world talking about this 24 hours. This is what the Japanese media focus on.
Oh, this is an actual news show? Where is this? That's a lot of snow. So I knew the news is about talking about deer showing up in the neighborhood. Okay, yeah.
While I'm grateful how peaceful Japan is, It's not just what's going on in other countries, but even domestic issues like hikikomori, bullying, or child abuse. I don't think many Japanese even recognize it.
おそらく9割以上の方が知らないような問題も多数扱っていまして、私がこれまで考えてきたことを見てきた世界と日本人の多くの方が見ているその世界っていうのはかなりギャップがあるなっていうふうには。
These issues do exist, but I wonder how many of us are aware of it. Now, I'm not saying we should be overly political or talk about social issues all the time, but if we don't even recognize it, how could we solve it? Don't get me wrong, we have many people and organizations trying to help people in need or poverty and make this country better, which I really appreciate, but wouldn't it be great if more people at least recognize it and do what they can do?
Yeah, it's really sad, but because of its culture, in Japan, we're really just so good at cleaning up the surface. We just are really so good at trying to cover up all the problems and just making the surface clean and saying that there's nothing there. Yeah, we're just really good at doing that. And again, the top priority is not to stand out, not to be the person who causes trouble. So we can't talk about the problems in the first place. Starting a conversation, doing a debate about a problem already is very difficult because no one wants to stand out. But once you start a conversation, once you start a debate, there will be small conflicts with other people, because we all have different opinions and such, different experience, but we are all afraid of such conflict. We don't have the actual skills to have a conversation, do communication. As I always say, Japanese people have very low communication skills because of its collectivist society and all the systems that existed that made all the rules for people to live in harmony. And also the people who are suffering from the problems themselves don't talk about it either. They can't ask for help. Because it's all cleaned up on the surface, no one notices it. Again, as Nobita was introducing on the news and such, try our best not to look at the problems, covering it up. And the people who are actually suffering can't say that they need help because that again is saying that they are different. They're a person that's basically saying that I'm not fitting into the group. Basically, that's the message you're going to be sending out to society if you ask for help. If people around you see you as a nuisance, they might not even help you out in the first place. That's the really sad thing about Japanese society, I believe.
市民社会が下から社会を変えたっていう経験っていうのが、諸外国と比べると歴史的に経験が少ない市民が世の中を良くしていくっていう意識よりも役所とか政府とかが世の中を良くしてくれるっていう意識を持っている人たちが多い。ただ役所の力、いわゆるお上だけでは解決できない社会問題っていうのがたくさん生まれてきていると。
And that's the end of the video. Thank you so much. This was great. Nobita makes so many amazing videos. So I have actually studied myself through a book. There was one professor saying that the democracy in Japan is not completed. It's not functioning properly. There was a professor saying this opinion in a book that I read. And it's because, as he was explaining, Japanese people did not win democracy. It was something that was given to them through westernization during the Meiji Restoration and after World War II. People today, they don't have the skills to have a real conversation, to try to solve problems, work together, and overcome all the small conflicts, understand each other, exchange opinions, and actually solve problems. They can't do it themselves. Then how is the problems going to be solved? They just leave it all up to the government or the people considered more important or have more power than them. Everyone believes that they will be solving everything for them. And I see a lot of people on social media, for example, that are getting really angry towards the government for not solving any of the problems. But of course, yes, the government is responsible for solving some of our problems. Well, we can't hope for them to solve everything, obviously. There are things that only the citizens of the country can solve themselves, right? And especially the local social problems or the problems that we have in our daily lives. This is something that we need to work on ourselves. We need to have the motivation to work together to try to solve it. No one else is going to be doing it for us. But the majority of Japanese people are just constantly waiting for someone to do it for them because they are afraid to, again, speak up, talk about it, and start a conversation. They don't want to stand out. And as a man who is training in various Japanese traditional culture, you know, like the katana and tea ceremony and no theater and such, not just the problem about social problems, but it's also the same in the world of traditional culture as well. A lot of the Japanese traditional culture, the population is declining, the culture is disappearing, and again, a lot of the people who are training in that traditional culture or the masters or those kind of people are constantly saying, oh, the country, the government needs to do something to preserve the culture for us. You know, you need to give us more money, you know, you need to help us out more. Of course, the country or government might help us, but in the end, we need to try to take actions and do what we can. Everyone is just so afraid of taking responsibility, speaking up, trying to create change. We need someone, absolutely someone that would have the courage to fight through all of the being attacked by other people, standing out, maybe even being criticized and harassed by other people, but trying to actually take responsibility and make change in the world of everything in Japan, solving the social problems, preserving traditional culture, maybe even evolving it. We need those kind of people. Otherwise, the future of Japan is going to be very, very dark, I believe. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. Now, Nobita and I talked about the same theme about why Japanese people are so cold-hearted, but the way he explained it was completely different from mine, and it was really, really fun. Watching his video was very, very educational and so much fun. I really hope you can check out his other videos too. And also, I wanted to explain at the very end, I received a lot of comments and messages asking me, Shogo, why do you hate your country so much? Why do you continue to say so many bad things about your own nation, your culture? But I am not here to try to just come and attack Japan and criticize it and beat it up and everything. I am just here to try to understand my country more in a deeper point of view. If you just, again, look at the surface of Japan, you might think that it's clean, you might think that it's safe, but deep down, there are problems that are hidden from us. And those are the things that we need to look at if we really want to make Japan a better place. As I always say, the ultimate goal of my life is to make all Japan lovers' dreams come true, right? And to do that, we need to really improve, not just the surface, but from the root of Japanese culture and the characteristics of Japanese people. We need to really gradually, it'll take time, it's something that it will take a lot of time, but we need to really focus on the root of the problem, not just the surface that seems clean, so we can make the right choices. This is the reason why I study about social problems. I try to be critical when I look at my own country's culture and such. But if I hated Japan, or if I hated Japanese culture, I would not be sitting in front of you here with a kimono and training in various traditional culture, right? Please understand that I'm just very, very serious about trying to make my country a better place for future generations and for them to make their dreams come true. So there everyone, if you enjoyed watching this video, it'd be great if you can give us a like, and please let me know in the comments about your opinions about Japanese culture and the characteristics of Japanese people, what you think is something that we can do to make the Japanese society a better place. And our goal is to achieve 2 million subscribers by January 2023, so it'd be great if you can help us out by subscribing. And I'll see you in my next React video. 皆さんどうもありがとうございました。